Hey loves, welcome back to my channel. Today guys, I'll be checking out this interesting video from Araku TV, and it's titled Historian Destroys Delusional Woke Woman with Facts. You guys, I'm excited for this. If you're here to subscribe to this channel, please consider subscribing. Give this video a massive thumbs up, comment, share, and all that good stuff. And without much ado, let's see what this video is all about.
In recent months, we've seen the issue of slavery and colonialism expand beyond campuses, as we've now got, of course, from Barbados to Jamaica, prominent Caribbeans are also calling for Britain to pay reparations for slavery and the consequences of colonialism. And Madam Speaker, were we engaged in this debate in 1807 or 1833, I likely would have crossed the floor to support the motion opposite, because, of course, the victims of the horrendous horrors of slavery would have been alive and deserving of damages. But it's not 1807, it's not 1907, it's not even 2007. Yeah. Over 2 centuries have passed since Britain led the world as the first empire in history to abolish slavery, and the right of reparations died long ago, because reparations are fundamentally about matters of tort law. The purposes of damages, restoration, of reparation, is to restore the victim, the slave, to the position they were in before the damage occurred, slavery. The actual victim only can receive damages, not their descendants. Yeah. And therein lies the rub, because some 6 or 7 generations separate those alive today from their British Empire slave ancestors. Yeah. And whilst not just yet, thank you so much, whilst it's undeniable that 19th century slaves suffered unspeakable horrors, in what way can this lead one to conclude that their great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren are also victims and deserving of reparations too?
Yeah, it's not because mine or your great-great-great-granddad was a dickhead that you've got to pay for it now. And it's not because your great-great-grandmother was a victim that you're a victim now. Yeah.
On the contrary, from Britain to the Caribbean, the descendants of slaves today have a far better and higher quality of life than they would have had their ancestors remained in Africa. And that's an indisputable fact.
Yeah.
Well, if you let me carry on, I'll tell you why.
This man's a historian speaking at Cambridge University. It's meant to be one of the most prestigious universities in the world, with some of the most intelligent students. Yet you've got a bunch of them getting angry when they hear facts they don't like, and another bunch in the background giggling like little children.
Well, first I ask you, is a current descendant of a slave ethically entitled to benefit from their ancestors' sufferings? And who should pay? Is it ethical for an innocent person today to be culpable for the sins of their forefathers? Now, CARICOM, which is the Caribbean body calling for reparations, wants British taxpayers to pay. But why? Out of a population of millions, there were only 3,000 slave owners in Britain. The vast majority of the population of Britain descend from people whose lives were one of abject poverty and hardship, working in hellish conditions akin to serfdom. Why should they, as taxpayers, pay reparations? It's not just yet, thank you so much. 16% of the British population is now also foreign-born, so why should they pay for reparations? What about the descendants of slaves living in Britain today? Why should people from Trinidad and Tobago living here pay reparations to people in Jamaica? Then again, why is the demand for reparations always focused and framed in terms of Britain? Why are no activists asking for reparations from the African states that were equally complicit in slavery? Yeah. Should they not pay reparations? They provided the slaves that were transferred over the ocean, and millions more slaves were kept in slavery in Africa by other Africans, just as were being transported across the Atlantic. Why does nobody ever actually speak about that unpleasant truth? What about the Arabs and the Muslims who bought and sold African slaves for centuries before the British arrived, and continued to do so into the 20th century until the British and the French tried to stop it?
What most people don't seem to know or forget is most races have been victims of slavery at some point. Slavery is a fucked up thing that's existed since the beginning of civilization. Yeah. Humans have always enslaved other humans, and it's still happening today, but they don't give a fuck about those problems that happen now. They're too busy playing the victim to things that never even happened to them and happened to their ancestors hundreds of years ago.
And indeed, what about the slavery that carries on today? The International Labour Organization says that currently approximately 7 in every 1,000 Africans is a slave.
Yeah.
10 million
That's a
people.
fact.
In 2017, CNN reported hundreds of slaves are sold every week in Libya. So much energy is given to historic reparations and the historic plight of slaves. I would have more time for the argument if the people actively pursuing that course of action were equally vocal about surely the far more horrendous plights of slaves today, where there are more slaves today in bondage, in slavery, than crossed over the Atlantic. So where are the protests outside the Nigerian?
You guys, I don't know who this man is, but he has every valid point pertaining to slavery and reparations, because if the people that were impacted directly by this slavery were still alive today, then they have the right to ask for damages that were done to them. But since none of them is alive today, I don't see any reason why their descendants should be paid for what they were not involved in. Like I mentioned earlier, slavery was the only way most of these Africans' forefathers were able to leave the African shores and go over to the Western world. And today, their descendants are the one now enjoying the benefit of either being a British citizen, American citizen, and some other Western country. I can say for a fact that if most of these people weren't enslaved, their descendants will still be wallowing in abject poverty in Africa and some other third world countries. Let me know your thoughts on this one, and let's continue watching, you guys.
High Commission. Where are the protests outside the embassies of Niger, which has 800,000 slaves today? What about Mali and Chad and Sudan and Cameroon? It's almost as if there's an ulterior motivation behind the call for apologies and reparations exclusively from Britain.
Yeah, that's just because it's not trending on TikTok or Twitter yet. As soon as it is and it hits the mainstream media, they'll all jump on it. Because a lot of the time, they don't care about these problems. They just care about looking like they care about the problem.
And how far should we take this? Should Britain seek reparations for the Barbary slaves? 1 million Europeans were enslaved by the Ottoman states of Morocco, Algeria and Tunisia. And it carried on after the abolition of the slave trade by the British. Should Britain demand reparations from North Africa? Of course not. It's time to move on, and so should we. What disadvantage has colonialism actually caused to those living in the former British colonies of the Caribbean? Most of the former colonies of the Caribbean are now successful middle-income countries. The GDP per head of the Bahamas is higher than Portugal and is comparable to Spain and Italy. You never hear that, do you? Rather than writing checks to well-off areas of the world, why not focus on countries and areas that are actually impoverished and require aid? The population of India soared from 170 million to 450 million over the course of the Raj because of medicine, health and accurate and proper nutritional standards and food storage compared to how it had been. There had never been in history of India such a surge in population growth. And let's not forget also what Britain did for women's rights, because I think it's fair to say that it's thanks to the British Empire that we have had the progression of women in Africa and India through society. Because, of course, India's history is one of female oppression. It was the British who abolished sutti, the burning of widows on the funeral pyre of their husbands. It was the British that stopped the infanticide of young girls. And it was the British who allowed Hindu widows to remarry. I'm sorry if you don't like the facts, but facts are actually facts. Universities were brought into Africa and India by the British. It's quite. There will be no system of democratic legislatures within these regions.
It's like this comment says, imagine being at an educational establishment and getting angry when someone actually teaches you something. He ends up completely silencing those rude little donuts in the background as well.
I'd like to end by quoting the great black civil rights activist and socialist Bayard Rustin, a friend of Martin Luther King Jr.'s and posthumous recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama, who said, "If my great-grandfather picked cotton for 50 years, then he may deserve some money. But he's dead and gone, and nobody owes me anything." Thank you.
Wow.
I think all this man is saying is Britain needs to stop paying and apologising for the past.
Yeah.
He's not denying that terrible things didn't happen. He even said if it was 1807 and he was part of it, he'd apologise. He's also just trying to point out that some good things came out of it. There's less poverty in these countries, women have more rights, and there's better healthcare.
Yeah.
Look, we have some big facts here. Colonialism and capitalism.
Wow, you guys, I totally agree with what this historian said in this video, and those donuts laughing and snickering at the back are totally insane, because no matter how some people say the truth, there are some other people that are not willing to listen, but they want to follow the trend of the media promoting slavery and reparation. If you check the history of slavery, you can attest to the fact that everyone, every country, the whole globe is affected in one way or the other. And saying the British should apologize and also pay for slavery is totally ridiculous, because they too were once enslaved by other countries. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section. This historian has said nothing but the truth, and kudos to him for stating the very obvious. And I hope that a lot of people get to listen to what he has to say in this video. You guys, let's wrap this video up.
Together lifted more people out of poverty in the world than any other two forms that we have here. Wherever you go in the world, particularly British colonialism, every region of the world, the most successful, the most democratic, and usually the richest countries are those that have a former colonial British inheritance. And there's a reason that Canada, Australia, and New Zealand always rank amongst the 10 best countries in which to live, and that's because of their colonial inheritance. You know, the army, the military, schools, universities, hospitals, the infrastructure of government, the civil service, all of that is due to the British inheritance. And if you look around the world, it's impossible to say that the countries of Africa and Asia and elsewhere would have had the evolution towards democratic legislatures and stable countries were it not for colonialization.
Well, it's an interesting statement. It's a brave statement. Narinda is, there's steam coming out of her ears.
There really is. I mean, Rafe, you sound quite mad. I mean, I don't know where you get your facts from.
Well, for history books, you should try to read one once in a while.
I don't know which history books you're reading, but they're not correct, because you're talking about benefits to who? Wow. Self-indigenous people and people who were colonised. Actually, I call colonisation genocide. Let's speak facts. Your facts are actually British colonisation, genocide, killed...
Genocide is a very difficult word.
I'll let you speak. Killed hundreds of millions of people. It's murder. There's a legal liability here. They killed hundreds of millions of people colonising the world. And actually, I don't like this argument, Eamon, that actually it was in the past. Because you said that in the break, that actually it's in the past. Let it go. The ramifications of colonisation are still felt today. Aboriginal people are still the poorest in health, education. An Aboriginal teenager is more likely to go to prison than university.
Someone said him historical, her hysterical. And it gets worse.
Totally understand her into your argument there, but part of me says, look ahead, stop looking back. We can't change the past.
How can you look ahead when you're still suffering? People who were former slaves, their families are still suffering.
No one is suffering from colonialism. Come on, Narinda. You're spouting nonsense. Firstly, hundreds of millions of people...
Hundreds of millions of people were murdered. Rafe, you don't know your facts, and I feel sorry for you. You actually
Narinda may be saying, everything you said may well be true, but Narinda basically saying it wasn't worth the price that was paid.
Well, it's absolute nonsense. Firstly, there's no... Excuse me, it's now my turn to speak. Thanks so much. Hundreds of millions of people did not die underneath the British Empire.
Yes,
that's complete nonsense. Also, life expectancy for Aborigines for thousands of years had been 40 years of age. You know, they were a Stone Age Paleolithic culture when the British arrived there.
So
they now have life expectancies of 70 years, 30 years longer.
No, that's not correct either.
I'm sorry, I'm giving you the absolute facts here.
Their life expectancy is decades less than white Australians.
And there are many reasons for that, but it's not due to colonialism. Their life expectancy increased by 30 years in 200 years. After tens of thousands of years, it was 40 years. I'm terribly sorry, but you need to go back and do some research. No, Rafe, you don't know
your facts, because actually...
I mean, he knows plenty of facts. They're just facts that she doesn't like and go against her little race grifting act. I don't even think that deep down she believes what she's saying. She's just saying what she thinks makes her look like the best person. She's virtue signalling.
The general audience that's listening and watching us today will respect what both of you are saying, but they'll say you're losing the argument, because he seems very calm about this, and you rightly probably. So you're inflamed about this, aren't you?
Because people died at the hands of British government and the British monarchy.
All right,
How
I'm
could
sorry,
you
can I just
forget that?
interject
Let
here?
me finish now.
Well, you've spoken for quite a while,
People
actually.
died, Eamon.
right.
Hundreds of millions of people died.
Okay, how do you respond to
Under
that?
the Indian Raj, the population of India increased from 170 million to 450
20 million died of the Bengal famine.
The whole cyclical famines of India ended because of British storage
Oh my
techniques
goodness.
and
Ray,
malnutrition
you're a liar.
projects.
You're actually lying about your facts.
Well, I'd love to have a longer discussion where I can expose the nonsense that you're spouting here.
You're spouting
Also,
nonsense on
the
national
British
TV.
advanced women's rights in India. The history of women in India is one of oppression. The British banned sutti, the burning of widows on the funeral pyres, and the British allowed Hindu women to remarry.
Killed in
All right?
1919. You shot
You
dead
wouldn't be here
children
enjoying the
in
lifestyle you
Darwin
are were it not for the Britain's great
basically what
advances for women. I'm terribly sorry.
Rafe, what you're saying is because Britain, the great British Empire, we went there and we advanced social justices and all that. Therefore, I'm lucky. I'm not lucky if my ancestors were murdered at the hands
Your
of
ancestors
British
are also
generals.
my ancestors. We're both
They were
Sikhs,
murdered,
all right? So don't
therefore.
speak as if you have
People were
complete
murdered.
domain
I'm
over
not
this.
Lucky.
All right?
I'm not lucky.
You are
Indian
absolutely
people,
lucky.
Aboriginal people are not lucky because of British colonisation. British colonisation was genocide.
I'm saying as
And
a
it
woman,
needs
as
to
an
be
Indian woman,
acknowledged.
you are lucky because
I'm
of
not
colonisation,
lucky.
because
I'm
your
not
life
lucky.
would not
I
be
live in
as...
a country where I faced racism. I could have been back home, and actually India could have been richer. Thankfully, we are richer now. Thankfully, 'cause
India is
Parliament
one of the
gets
world's 5 most racist countries. I'm terribly sorry to break it to you.
That's got nothing to do with colonisation.
He was calm and just saying facts, and she was acting like a little teenage girl that can't control her emotions. And if she doesn't like England and she feels like the victim, then leave.
Wow, you guys, that was such an interesting one. And it got so heated so quickly with that woman at the end because she was very emotional and didn't come with fact. And I love how calm and very collected the man was because he has every fact that he needed to come with. Let me know what you guys think about this. And I love the fact that he pointed out to her that nobody is suffering as a result of slavery today. And the British Empire really did an amazing job stopping slavery. And we're not saying that people did not die, but the kind of number she is making up in her head is unbelievable. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section down below. Do you guys think the man is right and the woman is too emotional? Let me know in the comment section. I really enjoyed this video so much from Araco TV, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye guys.